Many people doubt Meghan has long been a mother. Following her attendance at Northwestern University, Meghan began dating Joe Giuliano, and the couple got married after having a child when Meghan was almost 20.
Any truth to the talk of Meghan's ex Trevor writing a tell-all? It's like a soap opera. It never ends, from the US. I'm going to put it this way. I know one or two people who know Trevor Engelson. Some better than others. And everybody says Trevor Engelson is a fine person.
Picture this, a relationship falling apart so fast. There's no sit-down talk, no late-night phone call, nothing. Just a ring boxed up and shipped back like a return package that didn't work out. That's reportedly how Trevor Engelson found out things with Meghan Markle were over, not through words, but through a delivery. Trevor wasn't just any ex. He was there before everything changed, before the royal spotlight, before the polished image, before the world started watching her every move. He knew a version of Meghan that most people have never seen. And according to ongoing chatter, Trevor might not just be holding on to memories of a failed marriage. Some believe he knows details from a chapter of Meghan's life that rarely gets talked about, a chapter that doesn't quite match the story people think they know. Back in the day, Trevor was part of her journey when she was still grinding no major fame, no global attention, just auditions, setbacks, and big dreams. He saw the drive, the hustle.
Joshua Silverstein was her very first boyfriend. They were both only 13.
I've been doing more and more digging in the alleged teen pregnancy, and the findings are shocking.
Information came direct from Meghan's ex-husband, Trevor Engelson, via an intermediary. And obviously Trevor Engelson is a very successful TV producer. He now has his own family. He's very happy.
But insiders have hinted he may have also witnessed moments that didn't line up with the carefully shaped public image that came later. There's been talk for years about a certain period in Meghan's earlier life that feels unclear, not missing exactly, but not fully explained either. We're talking about the late 92nd, a time mostly described as travel or personal growth, but some rumors suggest there was more going on behind the scenes. One name that occasionally surfaces in these conversations is Joe Giuliano, not a celebrity, just someone said to be connected to her earlier years. According to speculation, there may have been a short-lived relationship that went further than most people realize. Some versions of the story claim there was a quick, private decision made in Las Vegas, something impulsive, something that didn't last long, handled quietly and never made part of her public narrative. To be clear, this is all based on rumors that haven't been confirmed, but people keep bringing it up, which is exactly why it keeps resurfacing. And it doesn't stop there, because alongside that story, whispers about someone named Noel keep circulating. According to speculation, this person would have been born years ago and raised completely away from any spotlight, far from media attention or public discussion. Some point to gaps and quieter periods in the official timeline, questioning whether those years were really just about studying and traveling, or if something more was happening behind the scenes. Nothing here is confirmed. But if even a small part of these claims turned out to be true...
Given her appearance, Noelle does share some similarities with Joe and Meghan, and she's even more like Meghan.
I've been doing more and more digging in the alleged teen pregnancy, and the findings are shocking. Both Camilla and side-eyeing Catherine. And so there's a lot going on. And of course, we have Prince William. Prince William, he's been horribly criticized right now because he didn't wait for Charles to finish his speech. He just sat down. He didn't even clap his hands. He just sat down. And people are saying, oh, he ignored protocol. William, His Royal Highness Prince William, is the protocol.
It would add serious layers to a story most people thought they already knew. And based on the timeline people speculate about, someone like Noel would be a full-grown adult today, which only raises more questions that people online keep debating. Stories like this don't just disappear, no matter how quietly they've been kept. Here's where the story takes an even wilder turn. Recent chatter online suggests that this rumored daughter may have already started a family of her own. If that timeline actually adds up, people are saying Meghan Markle wouldn't just be a mother to Archie and Lilibet, she could technically be a grandmother too. That idea alone has people doing a double take. Think about the contrast for a second. On one side, You've got the public image, the interviews, the podcasts, the whole modern motherhood vibe being shared with the world. But on the other side,
Now, Meghan Markle, we've all seen the picture of Meghan Markle when she was a teen. Well, Sean Johnson did an interview, and in the interview, he did it because he couldn't get a hold of Meghan Markle nor Doria Ragland. Because one thing is curious, he does mention that she looked pregnant in the article, but he says that's me standing with her, but he doesn't deny it.
there are claims floating around that suggest there could be an entirely separate part of her life that's never once been acknowledged. That's the part that keeps people talking. And right in the middle of all this speculation stands Trevor Engelson. For years, he's been known as the ex who kept things quiet, no explosive interviews, no tell-all drama, nothing loud. And that's interesting, because reportedly, he's had plenty of chances to speak out. There have been claims that major offers came his way, book deals, exclusive interviews, big money opportunities, but he didn't take any of them. So naturally, people started asking, why stay silent? Some believe it's about keeping things respectful. Others think he's just waiting for the right moment. But then there's another angle. People can't ignore the idea that his silence actually gives him more control than speaking ever could. Trevor was there during a key period of Meghan's life.
I've met a couple times her ex-husband. I'm sure
Meghan's?
Yes, I met him like personally. A while.
Somebody set you up.
We met in the lobby of the Soho House in Chicago and just sort of like flirted and then started talking and then met once in LA. Very briefly, we talked about doing a project. He said his ex was a woman from a show called Suits. I didn't know what the show was. I didn't know the woman. Months later, I see pictures in Us Weekly of Harry's dating someone, and I text him to be like, is this your ex? And he's like, yup. And I'm like, I go, you think she's going to close? And he's like, oh, she'll close. And I don't want to get into more about that, but he was like, she'll close.
He didn't just see the surface level changes he was around while things were shifting behind the scenes. According to some reports, he may have even witnessed how carefully certain goals were being planned out. And this is where the vision board story comes back into play. Claims even repeated by media voices like Megyn Kelly suggest that Meghan once had a board mapping out her future and that it included Prince Harry long before they ever officially crossed paths. Whether people believe that or not, it adds another layer to the conversation. Because if that idea holds any weight, it changes how people look at the whole situation. Instead of everything feeling spontaneous, it starts to feel more intentional, more structured, not just chasing fame, but aiming for something much bigger. The theory goes that building a powerful public image requires a very clean narrative, one that fits perfectly, without complications or unanswered questions.
Right now we're in Beverly Hills, and we're going to pass the Beverly Hilton Hotel, where I'll be on Sunday meeting the other...
What Trevor said to Bethany Frankel about how Meghan was going to snare Harry when they first met. Absolutely fascinating.
He's moved on. He has put Meghan behind him. He probably is not interested in people bringing up his past relationship. He has 3 children now with his...
And that's where critics start connecting dots, especially when older rumors resurface. Because here's the reality, even if parts of someone's past are kept private, the people connected to those moments still exist. Old friends, neighbors, classmates, they remember things. According to ongoing chatter, some individuals linked to those earlier years have started speaking more openly. There are claims from people in Chicago who describe a young woman said to resemble Meghan's similar features, similar energy, someone who showed up at gatherings but was never properly introduced, just there. Now, none of this has been confirmed, and it's all based on speculation and personal accounts. But the consistency of these stories is what keeps the conversation alive. Some interpret this as a story of reinvention, leaving certain chapters behind to move forward. Others see it as something more complicated, raising real questions about what gets shared publicly versus what stays hidden. And then there's Trevor's position in all of this, because according to rumors, he could have access to personal details from their time together, messages, memories, moments that paint a clearer picture of how everything unfolded. Whether true or not, it adds to the mystery of why he stayed so quiet. Because if he ever did decide to speak, people believe it wouldn't just be about their relationship ending, it could reshape how the entire story is viewed.
and a thoroughly decent and upstanding man who is very happily married to his second wife, who is the daughter of a billionaire. He is also far more successful in Hollywood than Meghan ever was or ever will be, despite her hustling, bustling, pushing, and dushing. It's not worked for her. She isn't star quality, and no matter how much noise she makes and how much she says, I'm just fabulous, look at that American teeth. Sorry, not fabulous, Colgate Snarl. People say, no, actually you were right the first time around, Meghan. They're Barracuda teeth. They're not a fabulous Colgate Snarl. What possible incentive would Trevor Engelson have to strip himself of his dignity? Which is what he would be doing.
But maybe the most talked about part of this whole situation is the emotional angle people imagine the idea of someone like Noel, if she exists, watching everything from a distance, seeing the headlines, the interviews, the praise, all while remaining completely outside of that public narrative. It's a thought that keeps coming up online because stories like this don't just raise questions about facts, they hit on identity, family, and what gets left unsaid. And here's the part people can't stop talking about. Situations like this don't just fade away quietly. If someone like Noel really exists, and especially if she now has a family of her own, the conversation shifts in a big way. This wouldn't just be about the past anymore, it becomes about the future too. If there are children involved in that next generation, questions about identity and family history naturally come up. And that's where the pressure would grow fast, because now it's not just about keeping something private, it's about whether that story stays hidden or eventually comes to light. Some online discussions suggest that managing a situation like that would be incredibly difficult, especially at the level of global attention Meghan Markle operates under. The public image has always been carefully presented, from Hollywood beginnings to royal life, framed as one major success story.
According to reports, Noel was born in or around 1999, which fits the timeline perfectly.
Have you discussed it with your father, Thomas?
Yeah, he said the same thing. I don't believe, and he doesn't believe, that there are kids, because you don't yank around and use alleged children as pawns so much. We're only going to let you see our children if you behave in a certain way, and we can control the landscape. I mean, it was like really sick and contrived. And I think he got to the point where, excuse my French, BS. This is not how you treat human beings about something so special and so important as family, whether it's the line of succession or genealogy, and the ability to see, quote, grandchildren before you pass away.
But critics argue that when you look deeper, it starts to feel more like a controlled narrative than something that unfolded naturally. Every step, every connection, every public moment, all seen by some as part of a bigger plan. And that comparison people keep bringing up, it goes right back to that moment with the ring being sent back. To them, it symbolizes a pattern: swift decisions, clean breaks, moving forward without looking back. But here's the thing, no matter how much someone tries to close certain chapters, the people connected to those moments are still out there, and stories have a way of resurfacing when you least expect it. Whether it's Trevor Engelson choosing to speak one day, or others from the past deciding to share what they remember, the idea is the same silence doesn't always last forever. And right now, you can feel that shift happening. Conversations are getting louder, theories are spreading wider, and more people are starting to question the picture they've been shown. Not necessarily rejecting it completely, but definitely looking at it with a more critical eye. While headlines often focus on royal tensions or media drama,
a lot of family members want that. If just to be able to have a point of reference, write something down in the family memoirs that, here's another addition to the family. So I think it's been a very cruel game, and I think he accepts it. And he even said, we've seen this much of this kid.
Some believe the deeper story is about something else entirely: ambition, reinvention, and the cost that can come with both. Because trying to move forward while leaving parts of your history behind isn't always simple. The past doesn't just disappear. It stays connected through people, through memories, through moments that others experience too. And that's where Trevor's role keeps coming back into the conversation. He doesn't have to be seen as the villain in any of this. If anything, people view him as someone who simply witnessed a version of events that hasn't been fully shared. If he ever chose to speak, the impact wouldn't just be about their relationship ending. It could add serious context to everything that came before and after. That's why his silence continues to stand out. Meanwhile, the curiosity from the public keeps building. People want answers about those earlier years. They want clarity on the rumors that refuse to go away, and more than anything, they want to understand how all these pieces fit together. There's also a strong emotional angle that keeps coming up, the idea of someone potentially watching all of this unfold from a distance, seeing the interviews, the recognition, the praise, while their own connection to that story remains completely unspoken. It's that contrast that really sticks with people. Now, if any part of the rumored timeline were ever confirmed, the impact wouldn't just be personal, it could raise serious questions about how such details were handled at a much larger level. Some even say it would shift the entire narrative. Instead of focusing on outside pressures, the conversation would turn inward toward choices, decisions, and what may or may not have been left out along the way. And through all of this, one thing keeps coming up. You can move forward.
Whom he treated with great love and great respect, and indulged her and was totally committed to the relationship from when she first picked him up and chose him. As her father has pointed out, Meghan has always chosen the men that she ended up with. Remember, she evidently is the one who suggested that she would be perfect for Harry. Yeah. Well, why would Trevor Engelson be writing a book that would strip him of his dignity? I don't think he will ever write a book that will strip him of his dignity. I think, although she thought he wasn't suave enough, sophisticated enough, together enough, because he wasn't pretentious like her, she thought he wasn't classy enough, because he was very immediate and he was very authentic.
You can rebuild, you can reshape your story, but the past doesn't completely vanish. The people, the places, the moments, they all still exist somewhere, and as long as they do, there will always be questions waiting to be answered. That's why this story keeps gaining attention, not because everything is proven, but because the possibilities alone are enough to keep the conversation going strong. Trevor Engelson staying quiet for so long has been seen by many as a kind of protection, almost like a shield. But here's the thing, shields don't last forever. And if that silence ever breaks, people believe the impact wouldn't come from tabloids or random headlines. It would come from someone who was actually there, finally choosing to speak up. And here's where the irony really stands out. Meghan Markle has spent years building her voice, sharing her story, stepping into the spotlight again and again. But some people are starting to say that this same openness might be exactly what draws extra attention to the parts of her life she'd rather keep private. Because once you invite the world in...
As you know, I've received many emails from the California State Department of Birth Records saying that they can't find such a record. However, my latest email request and the response they gave me, it's gonna blow your mind away. Because, I mean, it could all be a coincidence, of course, you know. There could be two Meghan Markles on Earth. You know, it's, after all, she's not that special at all, unlike what she thinks.
People don't just focus on what's being presented, they start asking about what isn't being shown too. You can't fully control where the spotlight lands, especially when curiosity kicks in. Conversations online have shifted in a big way. Topics like the rumored daughter, the possibility of a new generation, even that vision board story, they've all become major talking points. Not confirmed facts, but subjects people keep circling back to. Some are even framing this as a deeper look into reinvention, asking whether it's truly possible to completely reshape your story without parts of the past eventually catching up. That's the bigger question underneath all the noise. And right in the middle of it all is Trevor again. His name keeps coming up because he represents that connection between two very different phases, the earlier life and the polished public version people see today. Whether he ever speaks or not, his presence alone keeps that link alive. People see him as someone who witnessed the transition up close, not from headlines, not from interviews, but in real time. That's why his silence continues to stand out so much. There's also this growing idea that the past isn't something you can fully leave behind. You can move forward, build something new, change direction, but those earlier chapters don't just disappear. They stay tied to people, to places, to memories that others still carry. And as these discussions keep building, more attention is being placed on the names that keep coming up in the rumors. Noel, Joe Giuliano, and the early connections that people claim have never been fully explained. Again, nothing confirmed.
And the one thing that a true foodie finds offensive above all else is authenticity, because it rarely grates on them, especially when they move up in the world the way she did. Because remember once she moved to Toronto, all of a sudden, well, I'm mixing with a better class of person. Well, I don't think we can bother with that one anymore. Yeah, he was a step up, but I have a few more steps on this ladder to climb, and his ladder ends there. Yeah. Send back those rings. It is extremely mortifying when you have to publicly address matters that are private and humiliating, and you would much rather they had never been exposed or addressed at all, except privately and quietly. I don't think he's ever going to do that. The people I know who know him think he will never, ever do any such thing. So, I hope that answers the question.
But definitely not going away either. What makes this situation so different is that it's no longer just about celebrity gossip. People are treating it like a puzzle, trying to piece together timelines, connect details, and figure out what might be missing from the bigger picture. At the same time, there's a reminder here that's hard to ignore. Stories can be shaped, narratives can be guided, but completely erasing something, that's a whole lot harder, especially over time. Because in today's world, information doesn't just vanish. There are always traces, old records, shared memories, people who remember things differently. And as more conversations keep happening, those small details start stacking up. Some discussions even suggest that if these rumors continue gaining traction, it could reach a point where they become impossible to ignore, not because everything is proven, but because the volume of questions becomes too loud. And once that happens, even the strongest public image would face serious pressure. Not necessarily collapse, but challenged in a way it hasn't been before. Through all of this, Trevor Engelson is still seen by many as holding a key perspective, not because he's spoken out, but because he hasn't. That silence keeps people wondering what he might know, what he might have seen, and what he might choose to share one day. And what makes it even more interesting is that Trevor hasn't disappeared into obscurity either.
I remember when she was born, big new addition to the family, and we just have a very young sister here.
Thomas Jr. was 14 when Meghan came into the world.
Very clear to me at the time that, we were together, I would say. Yeah, she had a very clear idea of where she wanted her path to take.
He's continued building his career, moving forward with his life, staying visible enough that people haven't forgotten who he is or what he represents in this story. If that moment ever comes where he decides to speak, people believe it wouldn't just be another headline, it would shift the entire conversation in ways nobody could fully predict. And there's also a bigger question here. Why are so many people so drawn to this story in the first place? Maybe it's not just about Meghan Markle. Maybe it's about something far more relatable, the idea of identity, reinvention, and the parts of our lives we choose to show versus the ones we don't. Because no matter how polished the image is, people are always curious about the full story. That curiosity doesn't go away just because someone presents a clean, carefully packaged version of themselves. If anything, the cleaner the package, the more people wonder what's underneath it. And that curiosity is exactly what keeps conversations like this going strong. Because, let's be real, everyone has parts of their past they'd rather not revisit. Moments they've moved on from, chapters they've quietly closed, decisions that didn't make it into the highlight reel. That's just human nature. But what's being talked about here goes way beyond that. The idea of completely cutting off entire chapters of life, relationships, connections, even family, just to build a new image. That's what has people truly locked in on this story. It raises uncomfortable questions that go beyond celebrity drama and touch on something much more universal. How much of what we show the world is actually real, and how much is carefully constructed? Some online discussions even frame it like this: when the image becomes more important than reality, what happens when that image starts to crack? Because once it does, everything underneath gets questioned. Every interview, every public statement, every carefully worded response starts to look different through a new lens. And that shift in perspective is something that's very hard to reverse once it begins. People start re-examining moments they previously accepted at face value, and suddenly the whole picture looks a lot more complicated than it once did.
At the time, that we were together, it's what kids did, right? So she told her friends she liked me, I told my friends I liked her, and then our friends met, and then they kind of arranged it, and then we became girlfriend and boyfriend.
Meghan, she loved me. I'm a hero. And suddenly I was thrown out.
And that's why the rumors around Noel keep pulling attention, not because they're confirmed, but because of what they represent. People aren't just seeing this as gossip anymore. They're seeing it as a story about choices, consequences, and the parts of life that simply don't disappear no matter how hard someone tries to move past them. If someone like Noel truly exists, the conversation shifts into something much deeper: missed connections, voices that may not have been heard, and how far someone might go to completely reshape their own story. That's the angle that keeps people talking, and honestly, that's the angle that hits the hardest. Think about it from a purely human perspective for a second. If there's a person out there who has a connection to someone as globally recognized as Meghan Markle, and that connection has never been publicly acknowledged, what does that feel like? To watch interviews, see magazine covers, hear carefully crafted narratives, all while knowing there's a piece of the story that's never been told. That emotional angle is what makes this more than just a tabloid conversation. It's what gives it staying power. It's what makes people come back to it again and again, because it taps into something deeply human: the need to be seen, acknowledged, and included in the story of where you came from. Now, with talk of a new generation possibly being involved, the pressure only grows, because at some point, questions don't just stay online, they start demanding real answers. There's also this feeling building that silence can't last forever. Whether it's Trevor Engelson, people connected to the past, or someone else entirely, many believe that eventually more pieces of this story will come out, maybe through an interview, maybe through documents, maybe in ways nobody expects. And the longer the silence holds, the louder the questions get. That's just how these things work. What's also interesting is how the digital age plays into all of this. In the past, stories like this might have stayed contained, whispered between people who were there, passed along through small circles, never reaching a wider audience. But today, nothing stays contained. Screenshots spread, old records surface, people who were once disconnected find each other online, and suddenly a story that was buried for years is trending on social media. The tools available today make it almost impossible to completely erase a chapter of your life, especially when other people lived through that same chapter alongside you. And that's a reality that applies to everyone, not just public figures. But when you're operating at the level of global fame and scrutiny that Meghan Markle is, the stakes are exponentially higher. Every claim, every rumor, every unnamed source becomes part of a much larger conversation. And that conversation has a momentum of its own that's very difficult to slow down once it picks up speed. Right now, that momentum is very much alive and building. Some people watching all of this unfold have also pointed out the pattern of how information tends to come out over time. It rarely happens all at once. It usually starts with small whispers, an offhand comment here, a vague claim there. Then slowly, more details emerge. More people speak up. More pieces get connected. And before long, what started as a rumor in a small corner of the internet becomes a full-blown public discussion that major platforms can't ignore. Sound familiar? Because that's exactly the trajectory this story seems to be following right now. There's also been growing discussion about the people around Meghan who may have their own perspectives on all of this: former friends, early industry connections, people who knew her before the royal chapter began. Some of these individuals have reportedly become more willing to share their recollections as time goes on. Not necessarily in dramatic, tell-all fashion, but in quiet conversations, social media comments, and interviews that don't always make front-page news but still add to the growing pile of questions. Each small addition to the conversation chips away at the idea that this story has already been fully told. And through all of it, the vision board story keeps coming back. That claim that a future with Prince Harry was mapped out long before it officially began isn't just a quirky detail. To the people who believe it, it reframes everything. It suggests a level of intention and long-term planning that changes how you interpret every subsequent move. Every relationship, every career decision, every public stance starts to look like part of a much larger strategy. And if that's true, it also raises the question, what else might have been part of that plan? What other decisions were made along the way to ensure that strategy stayed on track? That's the rabbit hole people keep falling into. And honestly, it's not hard to see why. Because once you start looking at things through that lens, you can't really stop. Every detail becomes potentially significant. Every silence becomes potentially meaningful, and every person from the past becomes a potential piece of the puzzle that hasn't been fully assembled yet. If that moment ever happens, if Trevor speaks, if documents surface, if someone from those earlier years steps forward in a meaningful way, it wouldn't just be another headline. It would completely shift how everything is seen. The public story versus the rumored one, the polished version versus the one still being questioned. That contrast is what's driving all the attention, and that contrast doesn't resolve itself just because time passes. If anything, it gets sharper. At its core, this isn't just about Meghan Markle. It's about identity, reinvention, and whether it's truly possible to leave the past behind without it eventually catching up. It's about the price of building a public image on carefully selected truths. It's about the people who exist in the chapters that didn't make the final edit. And it's about what happens when those chapters start demanding to be read. That's the bigger picture people keep coming back to. And it's a picture that gets more complex the longer you look at it. As more conversations happen, more opinions form, and more curiosity builds, one thing is absolutely clear. This story isn't slowing down anytime soon. The questions are too interesting, the gaps are too visible, and the people connected to it are too real for this to just fade away quietly into the background. Something, at some point, is going to give. And when it does, the world will be watching. So what do you think about all of this? Do you think Trevor Engelson will ever speak out? Do you believe there are chapters of this story that haven't been told yet? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We want to hear every angle, every theory, every take you've got. If you found this interesting, hit that like button and share this with someone who needs to see it. Make sure you're subscribed so you never miss what's coming next. See you in the next one.